Hello, I'm Lawrence Diggs, and I'm from the sprawling metropolis of Roslyn, South Dakota. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the South Dakota Humanities Council, which produces the annual Festival of Books. We're pleased that you've joined us for our virtual 2021 event. We would like to acknowledge first and foremost that this program comes to you from ground, which is the homeland of the Oshete Sakowin, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. The South Dakota Humanities Council honors and appreciates the indigenous people who have the longest relationship to this place. Before the event gets underway, I would like to share some housekeeping details. We ask that you keep your microphone muted throughout the event to minimize background noise. If you'd like to ask questions or share comments with today's presenters, please type them in the chat section on Zoom, which you can open by clicking the conversation bubble at the bottom of your screen or in the comments section on Facebook. We will pass along as many as possible at the end of the session. If you wish, we will also allow you to unmute at the end of the session so that you can ask your questions directly. We encourage you to buy books by our presenting authors at your local independent bookstore. Our official festival booksellers are Books A Million and Birdcage Bookstore and Mercantile, and they're both in Rapid City. You can also buy directly from the authors and publishers, and you can look for the links in the chat. To help us to continue to improve the festival, we appreciate you filling out an evaluation form. We will share the link in the chat section on Zoom, and we'll also email you a link to this survey at the conclusion of the festival. Finally, you can keep the festival free by making a tax-deductible donation to the South Dakota Humanities Council. Just visit our website, sdhumanities.org, and click on the donate button. This festival would not be possible without the generous and numerous support of organizations and individuals who have already donated and are acknowledged on the back cover of the festival guide and on our website. And now on with the show. This show is called The Poet and the Architect. Did I get that right?
You just made me laugh. Yeah, that's good.
Go ahead. Let's go with program. Okay, I say on with the show. That's what they said. On with the show. So the show is The Poet and the Architect, and our guest is Christine Stewart Nunez, South Dakota's poet laureate. She is South Dakota's poet laureate, and she's the author and editor of several books of poetry, including The Poet and the Architect, South Dakota in Poems. It's an anthology, Untrust, and Blue Words. Is that right? Okay. Greening winner of 2018 Whirling Prize. I'm not getting this. Okay, anyway, as a professor at the South Dakota State University, her teaching and creative work and service has earned accolades, including Dr. April Book's Woman of Distinction Award and the Outstanding Experiential Learning Educator Award in 2019. And I can say that she does and has done a lot more than that, but I guess that's all they could get in those few words. Well, let's see. My computer's not smoking so far, so I guess we can turn it over to you, Christine.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that my home now in Winnipeg, Canada, is from which I speak right now, is located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. And I respect the treaties that were made on these territories. I acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and I dedicate myself to moving forward in partnership with the Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So now I am in the Faculty of Arts at the University of Manitoba, teaching in the Women's and Gender Studies program. So I just made that leap over the border about a month ago. So I'm stepping down as South Dakota's Poet Laureate effective Monday. So I have one more day, and this is my last week Festival of Books as the Poet Laureate. So today I'll be reading from my book, and then tonight, a little bit later, I'll be talking a little bit more about my years as Poet Laureate and some hopes for the future for South Dakota. So thanks to the Humanities Council, especially Jennifer and Anne, for making space for poetry at the Festival of Books every year. It's certainly appreciated. Just like to thank a few people too, the Women Poets Collective and my writing partner, Rochelle Harris Cox, who gave me essential feedback on The Poet and the Architect. Also to Diane and Lockward and the Interpen Books for choosing it for publication. And of course, I'd like to thank Brian Rex, my husband, whose love, work, and acknowledge inspired these poems, as well as my sons Xavier and Holden. So, and I'd like to thank you all for being here this afternoon. So structure is integral to the poet and the architect, the structure of lines, of poems, of sections, and of the book as a whole. I conceptualize the movement from beginning to end as a spiral. And I did a little drawing for you all today. Hopefully you can see this little my spiral drawing and the color-coded rings. Okay, so I'm a visual there for you. So I conceptualize the movement from beginning to end as a spiral. The first section or ring begins in an intimate orbit of the poet and the architect, with each poem moving outward, landing on a different point on the spiral and in a different place in relationship to the poet and the architect. So I kind of made that line to kind of show you the through line there. There are 12 poems in each of the 4 rings, and architectural concepts infuse this whole book, functioning as inspiration, imagery, metaphor, and its themes of life building and placemaking can be traced through each of the rings. So I thought what I would do for you today is just give you a sample of from each of the rings, a few poems from 1, 2, 3, and 4 that kind of take you on that trajectory of structure. And you'll hear a lot about different structures of poems in here, from free verse to received forms and several made up forms as well. So I'll try to be brief and not do too much introduction so that we can hear a few more poems. Ring 1, didactic, with an epigraph from Monica Barron. Love is an intense form of curiosity. Throw open the library of your body. Run your fingertips across this shelf spine over atlases, dictionaries, novels. Your hands, wide, strong, are lenses that ignite encyclopedic knowledge. Let's burn in biography, biology. Ask questions, unlock the map of scars, read lines of ribs, linger at the hip, memorize the archive's lips. Stretch your supple pages until you are open, explicit, and known. One of the things that I did in this book was I kind of went through emails that Brian had sent me, and I kind of wrote down my favorite lines or my favorite phrases that he said. And so then I decided that I would just steal them and put them into a poem. So this is called Theft. For this, I looted his letters, this heart print, this syllable quilt, pillaging photos and lyrics and text to trace love. I like loops. Your loops are even more lovely. For gems, I've looted his letters, skipping sentences with my hand, squashing sound in my clutch. I dipped and circled you in theory, no body of work to build on. For wit, I've looted his letters, for parallels. Architecture works in stories, and you pulled me off my axis. I cut out swaths of words to plot our origin. For love, I've looted his letters. And this one, thanks. This one is a grid. I actually discovered this form by reading another poet's work, that he kind of created this form. He's a neuroscientist, and him and his friend, who's a graphic designer, created this form and printed this book, which I have like one of the last copies of it. But it's called the grid form, and I thought it was appropriate given architecture's work with grids. And so it's called Love on a Grid, and it reads in two ways. So I'll read both of those ways to you. It reads down and across. We grasp flat surfaces, an emptiness like a countertop or a desk marked like spreadsheet cells, one a bed scrubbed clean or a calendar with stray dashes and ink stains, taut space stretching end to end, turned, new month ready, sheet of white paper beckoning. We grasp flat surfaces like spreadsheet cells, one a bed, taut space, stretching end to end, an emptiness like a countertop, scrubbed clean, or a calendar turned, new month ready, or a desk marked with stray dashes and ink stains, sheet of white paper beckoning. That was one of the that grid form. It's quite a challenge. I really recommend trying it, but I'm not sure I'm going to ever write another poem in that form again, because of the way it has to work, reading backwards and across and down, and yeah, in those little boxes. Yeah, it's quite a challenge. It's a lot of fun though, to try if you like puzzles, right? And you're willing to revise a lot. Ring 2, the poem I'd like to open with is called Palancest, and it is in the form of a ghazal. And so you'll hear the refrains, and you'll hear the slight bit of rhyme inside those refrains. This was inspired by the place where Brian and I got married, where we eloped in Minnesota, and you'll hear a lot of talk about ruins because this place is in the intersection of architectural ruins, and it also is for us, it's our second marriage, so we built on ruins. We lean on the bridge's bones, spine of rust, ruins of iron, a picture of life against ruins. Abandoned means maples, oaks, and cedars are free to touch your forehead and say, new love, trust ruins. An arch of stone and an arch of I do span walls, St. Anthony Falls, 2 lives, and a park's ruins. Abandoned is the heel's impression as the foot steps away, a mark smoothed when we discussed ruins. Before we met, you called out to me. When the words arrived in my ear, I thought they were just ruins. At the shell of a river mill, ghost flower falls through the air, flakes of factory snow, dust ruins. My love, the landscape subsumed my past and yours and left a trace upon which our vows trust ruins. Which Loves Architect was one of the first poems that I wrote in this book, and my first title for the book was Poet Loves Architect, because I just didn't think anyone could handle like Which Loves Architect as the title of my book. But then my writing partners all talked me out of that one. And so the book became The Poet and the Architect. But this is Which Loves Architect, and it's in a triolet. My husband writes shelter. I architect spells. Word building bridges, graphics, and sites to make place. With cauldron models, my husband writes shelter. I architect spells by conjuring lines my hand compels. Casting material insights, my husband writes shelter. I architect spells. Word building bridges, graphics, and sites. And this next one, I was reading a book of poetry by John Haydock, and he was an architect and he wrote poetry too. And when I came across this quote by him, I knew I had to write a response to it. And the quote is, "I don't make any separations. A poem is a poem, a building's a building. I mean, it's all structure." And I think in a way that that should be the beginning of the entire book, because like I said at the introduction, it's all about structure. This book is all, structural. So so this poem definitely inspired this particular, so that quote inspired this particular poem, but also traveling, being away from each other a lot, also was an inspiration. So when you're away, I consider form. I need villanelles of you pulling my breath like lines moving down the page in the promise of rhyme bending my ear. I need a sestina of touch, patterns of palm, stroke, skim, brush, and rub returning. A cycle of sound and pressure I apprehend in my bones. I need the triola's refrain rolling off your tongue like a sample, new and nuanced, here and here and here. It's all structure, is why I need angles of play, the love our bodies build. I miss you. The ache's more sour than a dropped foot, a forced rhyme. If you're free from me too long, what will you jettison first? Meter, lines, come home. Our sonnets, the 14 creases in the sheets. A couplet of light greens your eyes, only inches from mine when iams ascend atop iams. Please, I need you in haiku, distilled in syllables, laid bare in the last line's turn. So ring 3, I apologize for those of you who've heard me read before. I'm trying to read some new poems, but ring 3 has my favorite poem. I decided that this is my favorite poem. I never choose favorite poems, but this one I think is it. Every day we live, dream, and build. I think it's because all of my family is in this poem, or is kind of inspired this poem, and so it's a fun one for me to read. Also, it has an epigraph from the Lego movie, which is "Everything is awesome when you're living the dream," and which became a kind of joke around our house, which because rarely are things always awesome. So, by the time we'd met, we'd already dumped some hefty dreams. Divorce does that. But living the dream, however ridiculous, is so subtly seductive. Just like Jefferson's grid, corrupted into cul-de-sacs meant to keep the riffraff out, although no one admits to that as a motive for design. You say sustainability is claptrap. From scratch, it takes more energy to build. Well, what's better? Using the material one has, remodeling, augmenting, considering context, relationships. It's about the big picture. Make it metropolitan. So here we are, a dream team, and each day we stick brick to brick, bread to bread, bed to bed. Each day we stack snack on snack, book on book. Each day we stay and build with what we have. 2 minifigures, children, one brown-haired, one blonde, and seizure bricks, autism bricks, turbo bricks, trickster bricks, peacemaker bricks, extrovert bricks, energy, energy, energy. Each morning back to the Lego table you built in a day to rethink, add more, subtract time, try again. In the work, we find our way, a clear path, walk the edge, push back the peripheries, identify a corner, collect a history, and voila, a building. Consider this house, these 4 hearts, space as invention. And one poem I have You guys are a great audience. um, the poem Acclimatize, I haven't read very much readings yet. And this one is based on a house that the SDSU architecture students and under one of Brian's friends, Chuck McBride, built in Brookings. And we visited that house so much during its building phases that Xavier thought we were going to live there. He thought that was our house. And he was kind of brokenhearted to learn that we weren't going to live there. So it's called The Passive House, and you'll hear that referenced in the poem. Acclimatize. The passive house, the home my husband and I watched from skeleton of board and steel to walls thick with insulation. The house our son thinks is ours because he kicked up sawdust running along its planks. Features a homogeneous interior temperature, sustainable despite winter's negative 40-degree days. In our skin's cells, intrinsic heat works from a brush of a hand, an ode to a staircase, or a photo of a well-worn dwelling. And when sundogs appear, they glitter against the gauze of sunrise. And I recall the morning my husband arrived with snow frozen in his hair, icicled eyelashes melting from my touch. He helps build for balance. Our son, however, is a creature of the cold. On nights the wind chill vacuums breath, our preschooler spins stories of ice railroads and woolly mammoths. Yet after a day of sledding and sipping on snow cones, he slipped into our bed between us for warmth. He's the reason I know that cold shifts DNA. Relationships or house, we design for heat. And the irony that we just moved farther north is not lost. Is not lost on me at all. More cold to contend with, but I'm welcoming it. I'm going to throw my heart open to the cold, just like Xavier does. And here's a little one about Holden. It's called site planning. One of the things to know is that most of you know, I think some of you maybe not, but my son Holden has a rare form of epilepsy. And for 10 years or so, seizures would just bombard his brain when he slept, like 1 per minute in his sleep, that you couldn't see on his face, but you could see on the EEG. And so when he started to go through puberty, those seizures stopped. And the doctors had told us this would probably happen, and we were all wondering, I was wondering, like, what's it going to be like after that? Like, what's he going to be able to remember from this time? And what's he going to be able to do? So, site planning. As I cross this network of interstates driving toward home, I'm dried out of words until I hear neural network on the radio. And I picture a lake with streams that branch and taper. Net, work. My mother made nets for my oldest son, family, stories, photos, arms reaching. Across chasms, I've woven lifelines to schools, doctors, and specialists so he won't fall through. And as I drive past fields so flooded, I can't see where they thin or end, I recall the pervasiveness of his seizures, 1 per minute when he slept. They're receding now, but what will they leave when they've dried up? Some say new knowledge and new memories. I imagine sunflower fields. What work will my nets do then? Perhaps he'll make his own trawls weave into mine. Either way, each day brings a facet of him to the surface, polished and gleaming. Ring 4 has a lot of really long poems. I mean, the poems in Ring 1 are these really tiny, really thin, slender kind of poems and couplets and short lines. And by the end, we get like Credo, which is the last poem in the book, and it's like 3 or 4 pages long. So the poems tend to get longer as the book goes. But I'll just read 3 of the shorter ones, so we have some time for questions. And from Ring 4. And the first one is I reference, I don't even like to say his name, but because we haven't thought really a lot about him for a while, I'll say who it is I'm referencing, but it's Jeffrey Epstein. And this is a true story. True story. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about it afterwards. Blueprints and ghosts. My husband and I were midnight whispering in the moment the soul opens after the body is sated, that moment when everything's laid bare and imagination, past and present collide, everything come possible. When he tells me he helped design a project that still haunts him. The clients? New Yorkers, creepy, sleek, budget unlimited. The elder, founder of the lingerie store housed in every American mall, introduced the younger client to the team, and he requested a cabin, a picnic place for models featuring baskets, bear-skinned rugs, and a fireplace for cold desert nights. A glass wall overlooked a vista in New Mexico. The road-facing wall was windowless, save a few narrow slits. Silk against skin, they shook hands. How close can one get to evil before it tarnishes? My husband's heart skittered across history, architects who designed concentration camps and gallows. He wondered how much they knew and when and how they felt about knowing. He wondered if design could help men do bad better. At 55, he can draw that cabin from memory, the same one he drew at age 32, the year his daughter was born, the year a surgeon scraped out a tumor from his knee. And he can still feel that post-meeting handshake. That cabin made news this week. Predator, sex trafficking, hundreds of girls. Now nightmares cross my husband's midnights. His hand erases walls, line after line, page after page, until, as he rubs the last angle away, the cabin returns. Over and over, he begins again. This poem is called Research. My husband pores over aerial photographs of land to the east of our South Dakota home. Berms in the farmland, clusters of trees, faint lines through crops help him trace a railroad line long abandoned. He zooms to view and identifies caissons once used to support bridges. They're crumbling, nearly obscured with grasses and trees. He might drive there to collect the taste of dust in his mouth. When he's gathered enough evidence, he digs around archives, ads, maps, photographs, anything to recreate a history lost in the landscape. We both search this way, moments of discovery and loss juxtaposed until it transforms. I sift through memories, hold one up to the light and replay it over and over and slow. I consider all its facets, its tensions. Sometimes art amplifies or crystallizes emotion. Sometimes the body makes meaning for itself. No matter what the evidence, we counter the fading effects of time as our disciplines whisper. Tell where you've been, and we'll know where you'll go. And so the last poem I'll read is called Map and Meaning. And this is one of the poems that has kicked around a lot. Like I've never found a place for it in a manuscript until this book, but it's kind of an older poem that I've radically revised so many times. I don't even remember what it used to be way back, but here it is. Second to the last poem in this book. Map and Meaning. For years, I've waited for a map as if anticipating a savior. I wanted it to tell me what mattered most. To practice divining, I traced concentric elevation lines, splotches of lakes, and curving rivers on maps of others. I ciphered climate and topography, reservoirs and resources, roads and dead ends. On globes, I touched the smooth Atlantic and raised Himalayas, but outdated ones disturbed me. How could a country change its borders, shed its name, disappear? A few times, I sketched out a neighborhood. Others outlined interstate systems and beltways, inked in rivers and island cities. Once, someone who claimed to love me painted a perimeter. It's tough to make one's own map. I predicted my true map would be unconventional. Turquoise mass like a broken Pangea, corners smudged gold, orange oval and gray hued rings hovering. My map marked the spiral of stops along my path. In its abstraction, my map made everything mean. So thank you. So I have a few minutes for questions. Sharon's like, where are you moving? Sharon, I moved to Canada. I live in Winnipeg now. Brian and I got jobs at the University of Manitoba. So we, yes, really and truly. I'll talk a little bit more about why tonight at the other meeting, but yeah, I think COVID was really an enlightening time for me at SDSU. There had been a lot of things that made me reconsider my place there, whether or not I fit in. And so now when this opportunity came to make a change, we jumped at the chance. Yep. So one of the questions is, how do you measure how much you reveal of others, such as your son and husband in your work, or maybe people you know less well? I really approach, well, with poetry, you can always hide behind the fact that it's poetry, because in poetry, there's no allegiance to veracity. That's standard part of the genre, and there are some poets who will disagree with that, who will say you really need to be truthful. But most poets, even if it starts in truth, it changes in the making of the poem, or in the reach for artfulness, or in the revisions. So I think for this book in particular, since so much of it is really based on my family, I named them personally. With Brian, I somewhat got his permission. I mean, he knows all the stories, that the poems that are have things about meeting Jeffrey Epstein. I definitely asked him if I could print that poem. I didn't ask for his permission to write it, but I definitely asked his permission to talk about that. And he keeps telling me he's going to draw the cabin, but there's a lot in that poem that's put together from a variety of sources. So there's the time where the first time he told me, he's like, yeah, I have this one project that haunts me. And he didn't use the word haunt. He's like, I have this project that is always weird. And so he told me about it. And then, the day that Epstein came out, and then, but the other stuff, I had kind of put together through conversations that we'd had. We'd all had lots of conversations about the place of a designer in something that's not ethical or moral, like a concentration camp. And he was in Berlin, when he was in school in Berlin, he was like 2 people away from somebody who'd worked with Hitler. Like one of his teachers had worked with Hitler. And so he was always like that, he's always thinking about that and wondering about that. And like, you know, so I kind of combined through my own reflection and thinking, I combined a lot of those things into that poem, right? So when I read it to him, I asked him, I was like, is this, you know, okay? Like, is this something you want people to know? He was like, okay with it. And so those kinds of things, you know, and I think he's read a lot of them. I think he gets really self-conscious, you know, like I read a few in front of him at a reading, and he was a bit, you know, because they're, you know, yeah. But I mean, he never says to me, like, don't write about me or don't write about us. Like, there have been a few things. He's like, don't ever write about this. I'm like, fair enough. So Holden, you know, I always think about that differently because I've written a memoir about him, or not really about him, but he's the main character. And so I usually think about what he likes me. I would take videos. I've taken videos of him throughout his life. Sometimes there are difficult moments, so I can show his doctors, or I can show someone, like, help me interpret this, like what's happening, or help me know what to do in this moment. And he doesn't like me showing those without context. Like, he only likes me to show those when I also show a video of him doing a great job, you know, or, you know, a celebration moment. Like he doesn't mind talking about the difficult times as long as they're like in the past, I think. So it's hard for him. It's harder for that. I just have to, I mean, I have long answers to that, thoughts about that. So that's the short answer. And then Xavier, he doesn't like, those are the stories that I was told about him are more like funny family stories. They're just like he still talks about being from Antarctica. You know, he has this whole origin story that he like hatched from an egg in Antarctica, and there were dinosaurs in the egg, and then he went to, and he still references them. He's like, well, you know, in Antarctica we have this word for this, and you know, he makes up a word, and you know, so he has this whole, and this is since he was like 2. So I think those are pretty harmless stories. So I'm hoping he thinks so too. If it's somebody, I mean, I don't, you know, if somebody I know less well, I just don't think I usually name them, or I change their name, or, you know, I just don't. I mean, I have a poem in one of my other books that if you read it without knowing, like, it's just these 2 lovers in Italy running inside from the rain and having coffee, and the reality that it was based on were my mother and me in Italy. But I wanted, in the book, I wanted it to appear as romantic, and so I changed that, you know. And someone was like, hey, I remember that. And I was like, yeah, I changed it, you know. So those kinds of things, yeah. Your poems you read about are a lot of emotions. Do I find myself looking for words to accurately express a new emotion or feeling? So I try, you know, William Carlos Williams said, like, no ideas but in things. And Brian and I will debate what he meant by that, but I've always thought it meant that we don't, even emotions, we imbue emotions into things. And so imagery is where we reveal the emotion. So I try to find the most specific words that would evoke that emotion. And it's a paradox that the more general you are, the more people can relate. You know, it's actually, I think the more specific you are, someone may have not felt the same thing for this, the same way for this in the same context, you know, but you'll convince them with such specificity that they can relate to that feeling for you, you know, like they can relate that way, because you work in the physical realm, on the material senses, right? So yeah, I always, you know, struggle to find the right word, the right, you know. In one of the other poems in this book, I talk about articulation and architecture, and I'm trying to explore that in architecture. And I said, well, like, what does it mean? You know, what does that mean in my world? And I say, you know, articulation, in my language, the right word in the right place at the right time. You know, so the more articulate I can be in a poem is really just choosing that perfect word for the perfect place, you know. So that's, I guess that's the answer to that. What other sort, do you have any, we have a few more questions, I think 4 more minutes. So a few more questions, anyone? Have any thoughts or questions or? I can read one more poem, I guess. We have 3 minutes left. I'll read the last poem will be the Bring Your Dreams poem. And that was from, this is based on Brookings, South Dakota, has their brand Bring Your Dreams. And I had met Joy Harjo when she came to SDS here to Brookings and spoke, and her poem, She Had Some Horses, had always just like seeped into my brain. And so I kind of had that poem like, you know, running around my head, and I wanted to write a chant, like I wanted to try that out. So this will be the last poem I read for today, and then maybe I'll see some of you later. Okay, Bring Your Dreams. Bring your dreams that need 4 full seasons. Bring your dreams that need a hunter's moon. Bring your dreams that need August's humid heat. Bring your dreams that need June floods. Bring your dreams that need the ice of March and Arctic winds in April. Bring your dreams that need space and see them across the prairie. Bring your dreams. Bring your dreams that wear jeans on Sunday. Bring your dreams that eat beef. Bring your dreams that sing karaoke. Bring your dreams that draw midnight couples home. Bring your dreams that require blisters and study blitzes. Bring your dreams that crack open at sunrise. Bring your dreams. Don't bring dreams that break the rules. Don't bring fancy or flighty or phenomenal. Don't bring too smart or too sharp or too sexy. Don't bring dreams that stink of city. Don't bring wacky or wasteful. Don't bring champagne. Beer's king here. If your dreams wear sequins, cover with a cardigan. If your dreams speak with an accent, everyone will notice. If your dreams savor the spicy, supply your own hot sauce. If your dreams critique the status quo, speak them slant. Even if your dreams were already here, still bring them. Bring your dreams and spring them loose from doubt. Bring your dreams and string them together from scraps. Bring your dreams in 60 hours a week. Bring your dreams and fail at perfection. Bring your dreams and sleep on them. Bring your dreams. She brings dreams of cyclones and sex. She brings dreams of cliff diving and chislic. She brings dreams of roots and rhymes and riots. She brings dreams of silence. She brings dreams and a broken heart, empty wallet, new baby. He brings dreams of baseball and bonanzas and brews. He brings dreams of one more try for love. He brings dreams of catfish and kayaks. He brings dreams of peace. He brings dreams blessed by snowflakes and seawater. Bring your dreams to connect with spirit. Bring your dreams to build shelter. Bring your dreams to weave with another's. Bring your dreams to reinvent yourself. Bring your dreams to create a fine life. So thank you, everyone. It was great to see you here.
That was really wonderful, Christine. Thank you very much. On behalf of the South Dakota Humanities Council, thanks again, Christine, for sharing your wonderful poems and insight into poetry. And thanks to all of you and the Zoom and Facebook audiences for attending this event. Don't forget to visit our website, the South Dakota Book Festival and /virtual. I think it's the actual website is sdbookfestival.com/virtual for more great programming to come through the virtual 2021 South Dakota Festival of the Book. Thank you. And I think that's how to say good night.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.